Y'all gonna get good cooking now.
You ready? Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year 2026. I heard a little bit of that was good. Let's make some noise for a new year. You are here. I will tell you, I found so much joy when I pulled in the parking lot and I saw it was filled, because that means you are making already a commitment to grow in leadership this year by coming to BP Leadership. First time guests, let me see your hands. Raise your hand. Welcome. So glad to have y'all. We're so glad to have you. Hopefully this will become a repeat for you each month. I do want to welcome our online audience. We go live at 12:25 every month, so thank you for being here. And if you've never been to BPL, just know this is your chance to grow as a leader. This is your chance to hear from someone who has been through a lot, who has had great life experiences, and to be able to connect them with Christian principles. And I'm telling you, you never know in life when a moment, something you're going to hear is going to connect with a life event that you're going through. I always walk away with that aha moment. So think about that today. There are QR codes on all the tables. If you scan it like you're taking a picture, a link will pop up. And this is a great way for you to take notes. There's so much great content. The good thing is, if you want to truly focus on the content, depending on what type of learner you are, you can instantly send those notes to your email and print them out later. So I just want to make sure you know about that. And please write your name on the sheet. This is not for me to bombard you with a lot of text messages or emails. It's truly for attendance purposes, so we have an idea, like for instance, how much food we should order each month. But we are really glad to have you. I'm excited to see this room filled, and let's make this a monthly tradition this year, y'all. Let's keep growing. Let's give a round of applause for the person that you come to listen to learn and grow, Bill Purvis.
Thank you. Thank you, Haley. No one sets you up better than she does. And being the director of the Columbus Trade Center, if you ever need to use their facilities, be sure and contact her. She'll make a way to make your event possible, I know. She's working on a PhD. She's also got her new baby that I looked at her phone a moment ago, and good night, that thing is loaded with pictures of that baby. I think that baby has to look up every second and get mama to get a picture. And I am so proud of you. So what a blessing. And a blessing to you. Thank you for being here. Hope you had a good Christmas, and we're about to start into 2026. I believe we can go into anything with basically the right attitude, and we can kind of get better results. So I hope we'll look at 2026 as the year that we're going to write our goals, set out and achieve them, and that we're going to make a difference with our lives. And some of you remember this. Back in 2024, I taught leadership lessons, and I've always done it from the Bible, just taking a Bible character and teaching that. And by the way, that's how BPL got started, for those of you online as well to learn. I had a businessman that came to me. He was a banker. And he said, I never get promoted. I'm always behind. I'm a vice president. But he said, but I listen when I come on the weekends, and the things you teach, I say, wow, I could apply that at work. I could use that in my life. And so he said, could I meet with you once a week? And in those days, I didn't have BPL. And I said, sure. So I met with him once a week, and we would talk about leadership. And ultimately, he started progressing in his work, and then he brought others with him. And before you knew it, we outgrew a Burger King, and then we outgrew part of another restaurant. Finally, I said, how about this? We'll just set it up, and we started doing it CDs and things like that. And God just blessed it. And everywhere I go now, I know people that'll say, I've listened to that, and there's one statement that changed my life. My hope is that if there's any one thing you get that's for you, that you'll take it and go out and apply it. So that's how BPL began at that stage. Well, in 2024, I began a series out of the life of the 12 disciples. How many of you remember that? You remember the 12 that we went through their lives and what we could learn from them? And I'll tell you what I'm going to do in 2026. I want to go through the life of the heroes of faith. There's 17 heroes. They're in the book of Hebrews. They list 18 heroes of faith. These are people that God approved of. That he said, in fact, there's a great story, there's a great statement made there that's cool. When you read about their lives, it'll have in parentheses there a verse that it says this, of whom the world was not worthy. It's talking about how far above everybody else they were. And it says, of whom the world was not worthy. And so I've just decided that during this next year, I want to go through those lives and find those people and see what we can learn from them. Because if they did so much that they would impress holy God, and they did so much we're still talking about them 2,000 years later and learning from them, certainly there's something we can learn from them and their life that we can apply and use. So with that in mind today, the subject's going to be called the Bible's Hall of Fame for Faith. Now we all know what a Hall of Fame is. A Hall of Fame is an organization that it'll recognize people or groups that have achieved something spectacular, or they've done something so excellent that in their particular field that we look at them and go, wow, they're a Hall of Famer. You'll see the word HOF sometime over people that will say they're in the HOF, and it all of a sudden gives you more respect when you see somebody that's been put in the Hall of Fame. It's really a written legacy so the next generation and other generations can learn from. And so we've got Hall of Fames in sports. That's where you have coaches and players and teams. And we have it in professional fields, whether it be education or inventors. You have a Hall of Fame in entertainment with people like musicians and actors. But the Bible has an Old Testament Hall of Fame for faith. And when it talks about faith, it tells us that these are people that live so differently, and yet they succeeded so well that they changed their world, and they impressed and made a difference in the lives of their people, and that their legacy lives on. Now, none of them did necessarily the same thing. Some of them stood alone in their culture. Some of them did the impossible. Some of them overcame every odd. But all of them had two things in common. They all had faith, and they never gave up. They all had faith, and they never gave up. I have a friend who should be in the Hall of Fame in the UFC, and he's won everything and beat everybody. And because of personal reasons, they keep him out. But every time he sends me a text, he'll write, "Never give up." And I thought, that's what the Hall of Famers do. The Hall of Famers don't give up. They don't quit. They find a way to keep going no matter what. And so of those 17, I believe that, and these are just Old Testament ones that the Bible lists. In fact, I'm sure that if there was a New Testament list, there'd be a lot of people you'd recognize. And I also believe that since then, there's a list that we've probably even seen in our day. I think Billy Graham would make the Hall of Fame. I think there are a lot of people that we've seen. You may even say in your lifetime, who have I ever met that I think really measured up with faith? I mean, they lived it in that way. And so having known that, we're going to look at some in a moment. But let me just mention first off what faith is. Hebrews 11:1 tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. What it means is this. It means they believed, they kept believing, even though nothing around them showed signs that they should believe. And it doesn't mean that I'm believing just for what I want. Okay, there is believing for what I want is called the law of attraction, and it's true, by the way. It does work. But that's not what you want to put your foundation on. Believing with Bible faith is not just believing what I want, but it's believing who promised. It's believing that the one promised me cannot lie. The one promised me said, you don't have to look at circumstances, you look at me. And so that's why spiritually, faith is what changes our life. And so I'm going to give you the name of the first guy today. His name is Abel. Abel, A-B-E-L. Somebody said it this way, the way to remember it. They had two boys. Adam and Eve raised Cain when they got Abel. Well, we don't hear a lot about this guy. Who is he? What makes him an example of faith? There's not a book written about him. We don't see a lot of examples of him. And yet, here's what the Bible says about him. It says, by faith Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead still speaks. That little phrase, he being dead still speaks. It's a picture of, though he's gone, we still remember him for some things. Now the name Abel means I created. His mother named him, And when his mother Eve named him, he's the first human that was born when Adam and Eve, they were created by God. But Cain and Abel were the first two boys that were created by humans. And so when she created him, that was the first birth ever. When she gave birth to him, she named him Abel. I created, like, look what I created. Now, Abel was the second son of Adam and Eve. And he had an older brother. His older brother's name was Cain. The first murder in the Bible is the murder of Abel. And the one that killed Abel was his big brother. Now, it's interesting when you read that. And by the way, he's really the first one that ever died for his faith. And so the backstory is this. Apparently, Adam and Eve had been taught by God, so they taught their two sons how to worship. They taught them that there's a place to worship, a time to worship, a way to worship, and they taught them that. And so when the appointed time and the place came, these two boys went to worship. And they went to offer a sacrifice to God. And the Bible tells us that Abel raised sheep. He was and when he did that, he was a sheep herder. And so the first thing he did was he took the best sheep that he had, and he donated that or offered that or sacrificed that to God. He gave a blood sacrifice, which, by the way, was what God always required first. And the reason for that is because it's an indication and a symbol of telling us that you come to God on the basis of the blood of his son, not by our righteousness. And then Cain came. Now, Cain was a farmer. He was very good in the yard. And he gave God something. It doesn't tell us what. It was a plant or a fruit or a vegetable, but he brought his gift. And the Bible says that God looked at those gifts, and God said, I'm pleased with Abel's gift. Great job. And he commended him. But he was displeased with Cain's gift. And we don't know why. Theologians split hairs over it all the time. I believe it's because of the blood sacrifice. He was giving God something indicating, and he was doing it the way God said do it. But others talk about that he gave it by faith, and that's how the verse says, by faith Abel did this. I believe that God could see their hearts, and that he was saying, Abel, I see in your heart that you really are grateful for everything I've given you. I see in your heart that you want to do what I want you to do, and you want to do it from the heart. But Cain, on the other hand, Cain kind of just, he just gave God without much thought. Maybe he said the words, but in his heart it wasn't right. But God sees beyond that. And so the offering pleased God. And because of that, Abel was angry. And Abel was so overtaken. The scripture says he was overtaken with jealousy. Big brother, it's a sibling rivalry. And the big brother looks at the little brother. Maybe he got upset when he was born even. You know, sometimes they can do that. The first child can look at the second child and say, wait a minute, I was getting all the attention until you came along. I had all of mom and dad's favor until you came along. Now I got to share it with you. And so whatever reason, Cain had a jealousy toward Abel. And on that day, it was triggered. On that day, he walked away angry at God and angry at his brother Abel. And the Bible says that he invited him to go out in the field with him one day. They went out to the field. And when he took him out into the field, the big brother saw the little brother's back turned, and he killed him there. Then he hid his body as if nobody would ever find him. And so on that day, everything changed. We don't know a lot about Abel after that, but he's dead. Now that he's dead, Adam and Eve's second son has been murdered by their first son. But yet, Abel is in the Hall of Fame. Now, for those of you listening that are theologians, I'm not going to talk about Cain and Abel and theology and doctrine, because we could go into that and there's a lot there. But because I teach leadership today, I'm going to take it from the view of leadership. What do I see out of the story? There's three things I see. Number one, it's this: give your best. Give your very best. In whatever job you do, give your best. It says in Genesis 4 that when Abel offered, he came to God. He offered his firstborn of his sheep. He offered the fat portions of the sheep, that is the one that was the best. And he took the best that he had, and he said, because God's been good to me, I want to give my best. And I understand this. It's easy to give your best in the beginning of things. You know, when you go to work, you give your best the first week. I mean, the first week, you want everybody to know that I am the employee you're glad that you got. But when you've been there several years, do you still give your best? Do you go to work every day like it's the first day, or do you think now, hey, I've got it mastered and I don't have to give my best, and others around me don't, so why should I? In your marriage, when you first get married, we do that. We give our best. I remember when I was dating my wife, Miss Debbie. I remember before, when I first got married, it kind of hit me one time. We first got married and we first dating, and I'd shave and clean up and put on my best clothes and put on my foo-foo juice and all that stuff. And I cleaned my car. I did all that stuff, wash it down, and I was taking her on a date. And then I realized that after we'd been dating about a year, I'd pull up to her house and honk the horn and say, "Come on, woman, we got to go." And so I had gotten slack. And it's easy to do that when you've had the job long enough. In a marriage, you can do the same thing. You can start off in a marriage. It's the most precious thing in the world. Some of you ladies, when you walked in and saw your husband and watched how his behavior was, he threw his clothes down. You didn't care. You were married. And he left all his stuff all over the bathroom cabinet, but that didn't matter. You were married, and you just loved it. And then after about 6 months, you said, "You need to clean up that mess. What a slob you are." And so there's a tendency when we first go into any job or marriage or relationship to give our best. But then afterwards, we have a tendency to coast. Remember this, you can only coast going downhill. That's the only way you can coast. And so you want to make certain that in your life that you say, "I want to give my best every day in my marriage." In fact, some of you don't realize how good it would do, even in your marriage today, if maybe you just texted that spouse and said, "Just thinking about you today, want you to know I love you," or appreciate a certain thing. Or if you texted your boss, people say, "I wish I got a raise. Why don't you try this?" Text him and just say, "I worked a lot of places, but nowhere that I've grown as much or had such a boss as you. Thank you." You know what your boss would do? Suddenly you get on his radar. And so there's a lot of ways you can get far in life by keeping appreciation and gratitude on the front burner. And so when I look at that, I see that when you give your best, and that maybe for Cain, it was just worship was routine. Maybe for Cain, it was just check it off the list. In fact, I say this, when we talk about giving our best today, I think about this. Some of you gym owners, I see several of you today, you know how it works. In January, man, the gym is full. You can't get a parking place. You can't get a machine to work on. Everybody's there. It's a new resolution. But about March, you walk in there and you could shoot a gun and it wouldn't hit nobody. It suddenly changes. After a while, we say, "Hey, look, McDonald's is a whole lot better than the gym." And so what I want you to remember is this. There's a verse in Ecclesiastes written by the wisest man in the world. He says, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might." Whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. Many years ago, when I was growing in leadership and learning, I went to a conference for one reason. There was a speaker by the name of Jack Welch. Man, I was so excited to hear him. He was at that time probably the greatest leader and businessman in America. And so I went to hear him, and I got right up on the front. I'm sitting on the front, and I didn't fit like everybody else did. They had some executives from all over the world to come to hear him. And I was just sitting on the front with my notepad. And I remember they did a question and answer, and I'll never forget his answer. A guy said, "Jack, how do I succeed in my field?" And he just looked at him and said, "In any field, here's how you succeed." So I'm ready to write a long statement. He said, "Don't be a dabbler." I'd never heard the word dabbler before, but I knew what it meant. It meant don't dabble around. Don't just play with it. Don't be a dabbler. And he's saying, go all in. Whatever you do, give it all you got. Same thing the Ecclesiastes says. And if you give everything you've got, there'll be a day that suddenly you'll have the fruit to show for it, and there'll be blessings. So do your job with a positive attitude, with a can-do spirit. I have a friend that he's in woodworking business. And me and Debbie love the fact that anytime you need something, you could call with the most impossible job. And you call him and say, "Look, they said it couldn't be done." He said, "You're talking to the wrong one." And literally, he can find a way to create something that makes it happen. So do your job. Solve your problems. Don't pass them off. And by the way, do your best even when nobody's watching. Do your best when the boss is gone. Just do your best. And if you do your best when nobody's watching you. You're doing it then because you know in your heart, I want to learn to live at a level of excellence. So that's the first thing I learned by looking at leadership there is give your best. The second thing I learned is this. You can still do everything right and make an enemy. You can do everything right and make an enemy. I've always said it this way. You can't make a difference without making an enemy. If you're going to make a difference, you're going to make an enemy. That just happens. Abel did what he was supposed to do. Abel did it where he was supposed to be. He did it when he should be. He did how he's supposed to. He did it with the right attitude, the right spirit. And he still giving his best caused his brother to be provoked with him and to rise up and kill him. And so even if you give your best, expect the fact that you're going to make an enemy when you do. I had a realtor one time that told me, he called me and said, can I talk to you for a minute? And I said, yeah. He gave me his story, and then I said, look, it happens to everyone. He said, I got into the real estate business. I didn't know anything. And he said, I stepped in, and man, he said, everybody loved me. They welcomed me. They had this big meeting. He said, they just thought that, I was stepping into a field that I was going to really succeed in. He said, they made me feel like $1 million. He said, but then I began to give my best and work like crazy. And he said, about 6 months later, I became the top salesman. He said, that was the day everything changed. All the people that applauded me now wouldn't speak to me. He said they were jealous of me. And he said, I don't understand. They acted like they wanted me to succeed, but when I succeeded, they were jealous of me. Well, that's the Cain spirit. I say this even in ministry. When I first began at Cascade Hills, people see this side, they see the blessing. When we came to Cascade Hills, there wasn't any baby in the nursery. Debbie and I had to come in. There was a little building, small little building. Only had 32 people. That was on Easter Sunday, so that's the high day. They didn't have any money. I didn't come for a salary. They had $1.87 in the bank. I still hold their financial records to this day just to remember that at times. We had nothing. No, we were the smallest church in all of Columbus, Georgia, Phoenix City, Harris County. We were the smallest. And so I came, and people said, well, how'd you come? And I said, well, I came because I came cheap. They didn't have no way to pay me. So I was the cheapest guy they could get. And all I knew was God called me and give our best. And I remember that in those days they have pastors' meetings in Columbus. Every Monday, all the pastors would gather together, and they'll talk about what happened on Sunday. And so I went to my pastor's meeting, and when I went there, all of these churches, every one of them were further ahead and grew, and I go in there, I'm the little guy. But I want you to know they treated me with the greatest love. I mean, when I walked in the door, they, Brother Bill, we love you. Oh, Pastor Bill, they call me, many of them call me Little Bill. Little Bill, I know you're in a hard place there. It's going to be all right one day. And they just treated me so kindly. And then one year, we baptized 100 people, and God began to bless. Things began to grow. And I remember when I went in the meetings then, and I wasn't liked. In fact, I'll tell you what happened. I walked to a table that held, just like your table, 8 people. And I walked in one day and sat down with my tray. The other pastors looked at one another, nodded their heads. All 7 of them got up, walked to the next table, and sat down. They were letting me know, you are now our enemy. You're not our friend. Your church is growing. You're being blessed like Abel. And so now you're our competitor instead of our friend. And I went home that day, and Debbie will tell you, I walked in. You know how a wife can read you? And I walked in the house, and she said, what's wrong? And I said, I just got rejected by 7 guys that I thought were my friends. She said, you're kidding. I said, no. And she said, what in the world? What'd you do, Bill? I said, nothing. I sat at the table by myself and ate. That was the longest hour. And I said, and they sat on the other table, and our friendship was broken. Amazing thing is my phone rang from a guy I never knew at that time. My friend Ike Reichert. Some of you know him. Ike. We joke about Ike. He's like Forrest Gump. You can watch Congress speak, and he's behind, so everybody knows Ike. And of all things, I got a phone call. And Debbie said, some guy named Ike. And I said, are you kidding? She said, no. She said, he wants to talk to you. Well, I knew who he was. And I picked up the phone and said, yes. And here's what his words were. Wild man. That's what he's always called me. He's a wild man. He said, somebody tells me you need a friend. Somehow the word got back. And he said, I'd like to meet you. Why don't you drive to Atlanta and meet me? And I drove to Atlanta and met him, and he taught me then the same thing I'm teaching you now. When you start to do your best, sometimes you're going to have some people that don't celebrate. You're going to have some people that one time you thought, well, you were for me, you were my friend, and they're not going to be. And that's what Abel found out. That's what everybody finds out. Even when you give your best, it doesn't mean that everybody doesn't guarantee that the road's going to be peaceful and everything's going to be fine after that. And so what I learned from them was this. In Proverbs 27:4 says this, who can stand before jealousy? Who can stand before jealousy? Jealousy is a resentment. It's a secret sign of hate. It's toxic to your soul, but it's also toxic to an environment. If you work in an environment where the people around you, there's jealous folks, you'll never have a healthy environment. If you're in a home where there's jealous people, you'll discover that it's always chaos and division. If you're on a ball team and there's jealousy, you'll discover soon the team will never accomplish what it could have because somebody there has poisoned that team. Jealous people, by the way, they will say behind your back what they would never say to your face. I know this, that it's kind of the difference between jealousy and envy. Envy is when we want what somebody else has. Jealousy is when we don't want them to have it. And I've said on my own life, jealousy is at the root of every relationship that ever broke in my life. Once God began to bless, it's like I don't know how many fake friends I had or enemies until I was blessed. And you're going to find that. That's part of it. And so just like Abel, just like he did his best, gave his best, and yet his own brother didn't support it, many of you are going to discover that. But as you do, understand this. Here's what's great about that. The third principle. Your example speaks long after your words stop. When I look at Abel's life, I like that phrase. It says, and Abel being dead still speaks. My question is kind of this. What is your life speaking? When people think of you, what do they think of when they think of you? Abel reminds us that dead men do tell tales, whether good or bad. Your life is making an example. Think about this. There's some people still speaking today so clearly. Every time I see a plane fly in the sky, I think, them Wright brothers, we're still speaking. If it hadn't been for them out doing those foolish things, they said nobody can fly. But now we've got a sky full of planes because two boys were willing to go out and try it. If you want to take a vacation down in Disney World, go down there one day. But Walt Disney is still speaking. I remember hearing years ago about a reporter that went after Walt died, and he didn't get to see it open. When Disney World opened, he had passed. And his wife was there with a reporter. And she said, doesn't it make it sad that Walt wasn't here to see this? And she looked at the reporter and said, no, Walt did see it in his head. That's the reason you're standing here. And so the key is, it's still speaking, it's still going on. Your legacy can make a difference. Even when you're gone, he says that his legacy still goes on. And so what I learn about these heroes of faith is you live out your faith. What do you do if you want to be remembered? Live it out. Be all out, all in, go for it, but live out your faith. And then also never give up. Don't quit. No matter what, don't quit. I honestly, I can tell you this, I did it maybe for my own self 25, 30, 40 years ago. I think I still have it in my study in my office. I've got a big, thick, now you younger people don't know what this is. It's called a dictionary. It's a big, thick book, and from A to Z, it has words in it, and it explains the meanings. You know, now we have the internet and Google and all that, but we had dictionaries in those days. We'd have to. I remember one time I got in trouble in school because I had a teacher that said, "You misspelled these words. Go back and spell them." And I looked at my word and I said, "Well, how do you spell it?" She said, "Look it up." And I said, "How are you going to look it up if you don't know how to spell it?" And then she sent me to the principal. And I thought it was a legitimate question. And so I had a dictionary. And this was probably about when I first got married, so this was 46, 47 years ago. I took that dictionary and said, so that I learn never to quit no matter what, I'm going to take a pair of scissors and I'm going to cut out the word quit. And so I did. I remember my son Brent one day came and picked up the old dictionary. He said, "You got a hole in this page." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "What is it?" I said, "I cut out the word quit." I took another word. I cut it out, the word compromise. I cut that word out. So I got 2 holes in that book. That's easy to do. Both of them start with a K, so you can cut them both out at the same time. Truth is when you take those words out of your vocabulary, you take them out of your life, what happens is you'll make a huge difference. You don't even think about it then. All you think is, I got to find a way to make it. Now, I want to ask you a question for a moment. Who's in your hall of faith? Who is it in your life, if you had to say, I'm going to write down the names of people that challenged me in my faith? Maybe some people taught you in other areas. They taught you, how to, in sports or business. Who's in your hall of faith? Who is it that they believed when nobody believed? They kept going when nobody did. They inspire your faith to be more. Every one of us ought to have a list of some people like that. And I would encourage you to do something sometime. Write out a list of people in your life, parents or teachers or coaches or bosses, spiritual leaders or friends, that they helped you. And just write out, if I had to write my own hall of faith, what names would be in there? And if you get a chance, text them. Let them know. Call them, write a card or whatever. Just, I want you to know, here's what you meant one time at a crucial time in my life. And what you may do for others is bless them, but what you'll do for yourself is bless you for sure. And so the final thought is this. Here's a final thought that when I looked at that, I said, wow, this one just jumps off the page to me. I mentioned to you that those 3 points that Abel had. He gave his best and all. Did you know that Jesus Christ did the same thing? If you look at the life of Jesus, Jesus gave his best. That's what he did. He went all the way to the cross for you and I, for our sins, to atone for us, so that God could have a relationship with us. And God gave his best when he gave him to die in our place. And so Jesus did that. Second is, Jesus did everything right, and he still made enemies for it. I mean, they put him on the cross and cried out, "Crucify him," and he didn't do one thing wrong. Everything he did was right with the right heart. And the other is that his message, his life, his example, just like Abel, still speaks today. 2,000 years later, the most famous name ever is the name Jesus. So when I tell you today that you want to lead right and you want to do it well and you want to make a difference, do it the way Abel did. Give your best and do everything right regardless of who you offend. And on top of that, remember this, that the score's not in yet. You may be doing all you can down here and everything you know to do, but the truth is trophies are passed out at the finish line, okay? And you may not get rewarded yet, but there's somebody watching you right now. And they may be pleased with you when nobody even understands or gets it. And you just do your best, because there'll be a day you'll get a much better reward for that you've done that nobody saw but him. Let me pray with you for just a moment. Father, thank you for everyone that is here today. I pray you'll bless their lives and guide their steps, guard their path. I pray you'll lead them when they don't even know they're being led. And I pray you'll protect them when they don't even know they're being protected. Father, I pray today that if there's any of them here, if there's any one of you today that maybe you've never given their life to Jesus Christ, the Son of God, my prayer is that you would open your heart to him, ask him to come into your life, and maybe find a place today somewhere that you could just say, "Lord, save my soul, forgive my sins. I believe in and receive Jesus." And Father, I pray that you'll help all of us to focus our eyes on the things that matter in the long run. Bless their lives today, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being here.
Let's give Bill another round of applause. Wow. What a great way to kick off 2026. Earlier I said think about those aha moments, and I was just writing down a lot of different things. But one thing, and I don't think it's bad to repeat this, but you can't make a difference without making an enemy. That one really stuck out. I love harmony. I love everything to be going smooth. And then when conflict occurs, I remind myself, you must be doing something right. So I think that was a good reminder. When you came in today, everyone received a raffle ticket. So someone's going to start 2026 off with a $50 Visa gift card. And that person is number 95453337. Anybody? 954. Congratulations. So stop by the merchandise table on your way out, okay? Congrats. I want to also thank National Audio and Visual. They make us look good, and we're so glad. If you ever need anybody from audio and visual needs, please reach out to them. And then our next BP leadership will be February 5th. So mark your calendars. We're going back to the first Thursday of the month, February 5th. I hope to see everybody back next month. Thank you so much.